Hi everybody, Tom here at Tabletop Republic with our new series, the Speed Painting Clinic. In this episode 1, we're going to paint this Deathrattle skeleton from Warhammer Age of Sigmar and have a think about our spray primers, how we use them, and how they affect how we can get through our miniatures quickly. Now I've used Army Painter Leather Brown on this guy, and that's for two reasons. One, anything that I want to be leather or wooden or cloth, for example, is already finished. They're done. They are base coated and we won't be touching them again. And two, it's a good base for every other colour that I'm going to use. So rusted metal, bone colour, bronze, all work really well on a brown base. Now, one thing I'll note just at the start here is that I have leather brown in the pot here as well to cover up any mistakes that I might make along the way. But I will show the rest of the colours that I use as I go along. So, the first thing I'm going to do is hit the bone segments, and I'm going to use for this a Shabty bone from Citadel Colour. I've gone for this because it's a good mid-bone colour. I don't want to go too dark because we are not going to be highlighting this up. We're only going to be washing this miniature, so we are applying one colour on each segment. So for that reason, we want to keep things relatively light. And as you'll see, the way that I highlight this, so I hit this rather, it's kind of like a highlight. I'm just brushing this over the top and raised areas of the section that I want to be in this bone colour. It's no big deal if there are patches of brown that are visible through it. I'm purposefully not looking to block out the entire section with the bone. It's absolutely fine if a bit of brown shows through. And that will be the theme that you'll see we apply to every different section that we put paint over this brown on this miniature. Okay, so we'll carry that on and finish that off camera. There we are. So the next section that we're going to paint is anything that we want to be a silvery metallic, and the paint that we've selected to do this with is the Citadel Colour. Again, so we're using the Citadel Colour range here, and we are using Iron Hands Steel. The reason that I've used Iron Hand Steel, once again, we are not going to be highlighting this up. This is a shade lighter than the silver metallic you may use quite often in Leadbelcher, and that's why we're using it, because we are going to apply this just once over all the sections that we want to be in that silver metallic. And then once we've used our shading, we want to make sure that it still maintains a relative brightness on the miniature, because we want these guys to stand out when they're on the tabletop, when they are in a regiment together, and so we don't want things to be too dull. As I said, we are not going to be highlighting this up, and once again, it's absolutely fine if we just brush this over and some of that brown still shows through, because after all, this is a skeleton warrior. All of this armor and weaponry has been dragged through dirt and tombs. It's worn and it's rusted, so it's absolutely fine for a little bit of that brown primer to show through. It's a good base. So I'll just work that into these areas here, making sure that I apply it relatively liberally on any areas that you might usually associate with highlighting. So the kind of top of the helmet there, I'll make sure that I give it a good coat, just so that once we apply the wash later on, we've got some semblance of highlight or brightness on the model there. Okay, so we'll finish that off and we'll move on. There we are. So as you can see directly, there are little elements of the brown. You can particularly see this on the helmet showing through, and that gives us a good rusted, dirty effect to this armor. You can sort of already see where we're going with this miniature now. So now that that's done, it's time to turn our attention to the Next colour, kind of bronzy, coppery colour that we're going to use for the shield and some mail. And we're going to use for that purpose Balthazar Gold. It's one of my favourite metallics in the Citadel colour range. And we're going to apply that on the mail there, and of course the shield. So I'm just going to work that onto my palette. And the same theme will go through all these colours. It's absolutely fine if a little bit of the brown is exposed underneath this bronze colour. I mean, you can see there, it's pretty much just giving it a metallic tint. It's almost, well, it's a very, very close in terms of the brown. You could go at a more stark contrast there and use something like Retributor armor, but I much prefer to use this Balthazar Gold, this bronzy colour. It's different enough. So there we are. That's that little bit of bronze done. I left the inside of the shield in the brown. And next up, we will be looking to wash it. And what I've got here, this is actually a 50-50 mix of Agrax Earthshade and Lamian Medium. And what that means is that we're going to be using here a wash that doesn't darken the raised areas too much. The additional medium is going to help it flow more into the recesses. So due to the fact that we are not highlighting this miniature, that's going to help us out by maintaining what brightness we have where possible. And all I'm going to do is apply that all over the miniature. And this is kind of the second string to the speed painting technique that we're using here. First of all, we've got the brown spray that we use as both a base colour to all the other colours that we use, and we use it to block out instantly some components that we want to be brown anyway. This wash, as you can see, it's a dark brown wash, so it goes over all of these colours. We don't need to use separate washes. And there we are. We've applied it over the entire miniature. Now that it's dried, you can see we've picked out all the details. And around the back here, we kind of have a look at the trade-off, if you will, using this technique. Because the hood, the leather straps, and the robes are all in that same brown. But the wash, at least, does pick out those details. At least those details are kind of raised, which you wouldn't get if you were using a flat black like Chaos Black. You'd have to do more work with the brush to bring them out. We haven't done that. We haven't bothered with that. This is a speed painting job. We want to get these guys painted and on the tabletop. So when it comes to the basing material that we use, I was originally going to use this Armageddon Dust from the Citadel Technical colour range. But then it occurred to me there is a better option for the purpose of this speed painting technique. And it's going to help make the colours pop. And that is using some good old-fashioned static grass. The greens in this are really going to help just sort of contrast against the very brown nature of the model that we've produced. And furthermore, because we apply this static grass just using PVA glue, we can sort of jam it on there a bit quicker. It's a bit more forgiving. If you accidentally hit the feet or something with PVA glue, it dries clear, so it doesn't matter. Whereas if you use the textured paint range, obviously they are a different colour to the miniature, so you might have some mistakes if you get a bit too excited. And not only that, if you want to maximise the effect of those textured paints, ideally, once they're dry, you want to give them a dry brush as well over the top just to highlight the texture some more. So really, you're going over the base twice using PVA glue and static grass. We'll just be hitting it once with something that's easier to use. So Again, in this series, we are focusing on techniques that allow us to get these miniatures painted quickly. If you can imagine having 40, 60, maybe 100 skeleton warriors to paint, then all the help you can get really does go a long way. So just tap that off there, get the excess off, and run your thumb along the edge to ensure that you get the remains of that static grass off there. And I'll just pop this guy back on the painting handle so we can take a look at the finished miniature, because this guy's pretty much done. All I need to do, as you'll see here, is get a bit of that leather brown and touch up the edge of the base where there's a bit of the Agrax Earthshade wash. Let's just seep down. But apart from that, he is done. So this draws a close to the first episode of the Speed Painting Clinic. I hope that these techniques have been useful, and you can see where we're going with this. We are going to work towards techniques that really enable us to get our miniatures painted quickly with as least stress and hassle as possible, so you can have something that looks unique that you've painted on the battlefield but still looks good. So thank you very much for watching, guys, and take care. Bye bye.